Establishing institutions for the education and development of disenfranchised youth in Trinidad and Tobago is not a contemporary undertaking. Local historians have documented the beneficence of Father Jared Panton's creation of Serval, Bishop Arthur H. Anstey's High School in Tobago, Tacrigo Orphanage, and the Diego Martin Reformatory. Of note also is Frederick Streetley's work with the Junior Technical School and San Fernando Technical Institute, as well as Bade Sagan Maraja's Forte STMS primary schools.
Despite the sterling contributions of these forerunners, the climax of the 1990s heralded an epoch in which a revolutionary approach to treating with disenfranchised youth was critically needed.
Public perception, for the most part, holds that the military-led academic training program, or MiLAT, was designed specifically for students predisposed to deviant behaviors, or young men who had run-ins with the law. Yet, the cadet population at MiLAT, in actuality, reflects the wider society of Trinidad and Tobago. Researchers Dr. Randy Sipasad and Professor Rhoda Reddock argue that in the 1980s, many households succumbed to alcoholism and substance abuse in the wake of unemployment due to the contraction of the economy. This scenario led to incidences of physical, emotional, and psychological abuse of many young people, who in turn developed cognitive challenges before they even entered the education system. The dilemma was further compounded by the phenomenon of gang welfare, wherein community leaders established informal social structures, subcultures, and extemporaneous work standards to fill the prevailing socio-economic vacuum. These beliefs, interests, and attitudes would soon become counterintuitive to many young men, as they would be set at variance with the established norms of the wider society.
Quite a number of young persons, based on the circumstances they found themselves with, were out of school, and it became difficult for them to re-engage with the educational sector, given their special circumstances.
Government at the time had, Patrick Manning government, at the time had a challenge with the youth camps, and they formed what was then a social sector coordinating committee, of which the Defense Force was invited to be part of that. And that committee was directed to take a look at the youth programs, the WIDACs.
Brigadier General Philip Spencer, Anthony Philip Spencer, was the key and pivot and the team lead in setting up or designing the programs. He was ably assisted at that time by Major Archelaus Phillips back then. Now Brigadier General Archelaus Phillips was also part of that team. Colonel Roger Carter was part of that team. Major Sherwin Toyne Stevenson was also part of the planning team. And Lieutenant W1 Boyce, Ian Boyce.
And that committee was directed to take a look at the youth programs, the Youth Development Apprenticeship Centers, which were under the Ministry of Sport, wherever the various youth camps were, and to come up with a plan to better utilize the youth camps.
So our involvement would have started in terms of drill, in terms of military discipline, in terms of setting up a regulated environment for young people to start in their youth development programs, and those programs back then would have been youth camps, and there were several youth camps all over the country and Trinidad and in Tobago. They would have also assisted at some of the apprenticeship centers, so the Basilon Street Apprenticeship Center, as well as other apprenticeship centers like Serval, would have benefited from military persons being part of their induction training period.
And it's a two-part arrangement that sometimes people don't recognize. You also mentor that person into the organization, and you have to change their mindset from whatever it was outside to a mindset where this organization is now the most important thing to them, right? We have those skills, and we exercise those skills in places like the youth centers and whatnot, and so we were a natural fit for something like MiLAT.
Though the Defense Force possessed years of experience in transforming the hearts and minds of young men and women, its involvement in the youth camps was partial, in that its members played a provisional role.
The youth camp programs did not, as I understand it, and I stand to be corrected here, did not have a particular focus on academic development per se. The youth camp programs, as I recall, was more focused on skill development, providing young personnel who perhaps had not done as well in the school system. So my part in the MiLAT program was meant to kind of get around that, to channel individuals, but within the context of a military structure that assisted with social leaning behaviors.
This new era required a more robust approach to meet the complex challenges which lay ahead.
Even though we felt confident we could have created the environment to run the program, we knew fully well that within our system we would not have had the best of social workers or the best of competencies required to maximize the youth program.
What he didn't understand, Patrick Manning, that it was the depth of the intervention that needed to happen.
When people come to MiLAT program, first of all, they come voluntarily. They are not forced to come, or they're not sent by institutions, other than, of course, requests through the courts. And any requests, or any such requests, is dealt with at the level of the Ministry of National Security, the Chief of Defense Staff, and the Director of the Specialized Youth Services Program. They will lay out the conditions under which persons can enter the program based on requests from the court.
One such case was a teenager who had been charged for murder, who would have been incarcerated with adult prisoners on reaching age 18. His attorney highlighted the fact that he had experienced terrible childhood trauma, and as such, the court committed him to psychiatric counseling with medication in the care of MiLAT, or MyPart program. This was indeed an unprecedented ruling, but it signaled the tectonic shift that was occurring in the sphere of youth intervention programs.
So a great initiative, a great idea, but there were a lack of resources to really establish a really, really great program.
And it's in that regard we relied on the other stakeholders.
The Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, was one such stakeholder, and given that it had gained traction since its inception, it was earmarked to provide the launchpad for the MiLAT or MyPart program.
Civilian Conservation Corps program would have been one of what we call a flagship programs that the Defense Force would have started in the early 90s, and they would have taken a model from the United States. President Theodore Roosevelt, in the years of the Great Depression, would have developed a program called CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, to engage young people in nation building using citizenship, doing work in the country, conservation work, planting areas that would have been ravaged and deforested as part of the war effort.
CCC, which was at that point in time was a going concern, very effective, well established, became the basis upon which the planning, the implementation, the structure, the support for MiLAT and MyPart rolled out back then.
We were able to use their system of taking ex-trainees and bumping them up to the level of junior team commanders and assistant team commanders, and using them in the administration, which we really needed because we needed that level of administrative support.
I got promoted to an assistant team commander, and from there I started to do my bachelor studies in computing and information systems. I was there tutoring in the computer basics as well as the use of the mouse suite.
And we were called out and asked if we wanted to work, and we did a short interview process, and then they assigned us to different departments, and persons who would have been trained in like computer literacy, like us, we were trained like admins. We were placed in like admin in admin positions.
They were accustomed to that whole youth development environment already, the ex-trainees from CCC, so it was a natural fit.
Though many CCC graduates boasted of their success stories, for the administrators of MiLAT, or my part, a greater challenge lay ahead.
Sometimes the environment they were from formed a great part of the challenge, and they needed to get away from some of the influences that they found themselves surrounded with.
Psychologically, we saw that there was a gap in the system. There was a need for a program that was deeper in terms of its intervention.
Researchers found that once trainees had been through the CCC program, they often found themselves in some difficult circumstances back in their own communities.
There was a need for a program that wasn't only a day program, but a program that would have taken this young man or young lady, because the programs are supposed to also have women, taken this young man or young lady away from the environment that they would have been in.
It was clear that a hybrid, multifaceted component had to be developed.
Eventually what came out of it was the recognition that in order to deal with these young men, that they really need a very deep intervention, not a shallow intervention that was just skills-based, but they really need to look at their development across the board, their life skills. All of those things needed to be taken care of in the process. What came out of it then was a more complex arrangement than I think the Prime Minister had envisaged at the time.
You can't train someone during the course of the day and send them back into the environment, because the struggles and the pulls and the influences are so great that your training would have had a minimal effect if you have left it like that.
So we got the school at the Teachers Training College, the old Teachers Training College at Mousika, and they had significant challenges.
All of those buildings were quite old, and of course it was expensive to be able to renovate and retrofit.
It was literally in shambles. Because of the situation, I actually had to go and do project management to learn how to fit with some of those issues. So we were able to develop the kitchen and dining room and all those facilities.
As work at the facility continued apace, many parents were at their wits' end, as quite a number of their sons became victims of violent crimes, and some applications were reported as deceased before the official launch of the program. On the 15th of April 2007, MiLAT and My Part opened its doors to the first intake of trainees. Academy Cohort Chief, Warrant Officer Winston Brown, in an interview, reflected on his experience.
My first challenge that I embarked on was to plug the attrition and encourage the remainder to embrace the program for what it's worth. Secondly, was the separation of the serious cadets from the ones who were still bent on being disruptive and deal with the defiant crew by themselves. Implementing some of my personal persuasions, I managed to get some sort of control, but not the immediate results that I wanted. It was there and then that I understood the difference between transforming a civilian into a soldier and transforming a young man into being an accepted citizen in society with different behavior patterns.
One, we didn't have a template to follow. There is no template internationally for this. There is none. This is groundbreaking work. It was creating a model where no model existed. I was literally sleeping in the academy because I lived 5 minutes away from the academy, so I was literally there every night right, to quell and make sure that we had a peaceful night. During the day was no problem. The issues happened after hours. We had fights.
You know, real bad men run down the corridor and fire and things.
We had, interventions to quell situations.
Come in, they give instructors real talks, real gangster man talks.
We had persons from different gangs being in the same intake.
Wait, MiLAT right part? Only jailers is keep inside it.
Gang on gang violence, we had all sorts of different things.
When I got here, the teachers were not in classes. There seemed to be a kind of uncertainty as to what should happen.
We used to go little community centers. One center used to do plumbing, the next center used to do electrical, the next center we used to do straightening and painting. Until the second year, they organized everything.
And we started to work together to bring some structure to what existed. So we had to devise a curriculum around the teachers who were here. When I designed the very first timetable, during the course of the day, the cadets could either have academic subjects or they could have military subjects. So they could leave the classroom, go and meet the military. The military will put them through whatever military exercises or whatever military program they were doing. And if the timetable so said, they would then come back to the classes for the rest of the day. That's how the timetable was organized.
Everything is timing.
We told you when to go to bed, we tell you when to get up, we tell you when to shower, we tell you when you eat, when you have class, and those kind of things.
Without timing, it was nothing.
One of the great things that happened is that we contracted a team of psychologists to support the program. So while they weren't on staff, they were available to us.
To assess cadets' readiness to come into the program.
That psychoeducational assessment document was given to the teachers before they even saw the student.
The emphasis then was, are you psychologically and socially ready to enter a program like this?
If you didn't want to be there, we didn't take you. It was that simple. We looked for people who were ready to change, who had recognized for themselves that they had a challenge. And as a result, what we had, rather than a program where people felt despondent because they felt that they were sent there as a kind of punishment, what we had was an environment of change.
When I first came in the program, I had a temper problem. And my mind just automatically changed and studied the positive and forget the negative. And so let's see a difference in everything. So I can make a negative into a positive instead of just giving up on everything. That really am here.
And that to me is what really cuts MiLAT apart from any other educational institution in this country, because it's only those institutions like the International School, Maple Leaf School, do psychoeducational assessments for their students before they start to teach. So our teachers then had a chance to learn and understand the kind of student they were facing before they saw the student in the classroom.
We then started setting up intake assessment tests because we couldn't just take anybody. We had to have standards.
Using the academic assessment, the academic department identified eligible applicants from hundreds of young men who sought to join the MiLAT program, whilst the social work department, who had by this time gained experience in conducting the psychosocial evaluation, interviewed and evaluated eligible applicants to recommend those who should thereafter proceed to induction training.
How are they able to deal with conflict? Do they have goals set? Do they know what they want in their lives? So these are just some of the few things. We also look at how socially and emotionally developed they are, how motivated they are. And when we put it all together, we have an idea of someone who, yes, may have challenges, yes, may need work, but they are a suitable candidate because they will fit, they are more likely to finish the program, they are more likely to achieve their goals, and they're more likely to take instruction when needed and when given.
So we had to say, all right, you must have attained Form 3 by the time you came to us to have the academic competence to proceed to CSEC in 2 years.
It must be borne in mind that during the 2-year period, the cadets had to be supervised day and night. In other words, the teachers could not by themselves guarantee the success of the program. Yet, acquiring military personnel to administer the program posed yet another challenge.
We couldn't pull away from the Defense Force sufficient numbers to attend to the program properly. So even we in the Defense Force were at risk of not providing for the programs properly to ensure that the young people coming through them had the best opportunity then to advance.
Defense Force's transformative competence was needed, but the national service focus, that is, national security mandate, was not to be affected. This balancing act necessitated additional personnel and additional funding, both of which were not forthcoming.
So we had to pull the best instructors that were available to us and then try to teach them to work with the young people.
Without quality instructors in the MiLAT program, the program will be doomed to fail. And the quality of those instructors would have been, in the first instance, people committed, disciplined, and bound together by a common thread of teamwork.
Example, I remember every morning at 5 o'clock, as the training warrant, I'm leading from the front, doing physical training. And that happens from Monday to Friday, right? So it's a passion, right? And then the cadets started responding to that. They start learning and they start understanding in terms of leadership. You had to lead from in front and you had to set good examples.
Once you have quality instructors, those are the type of people that will always find a way in the absence of instructions, in the absence of the best materials, in the absence of any of the ideals. Quality instructors find a way and they make things happen for the benefit of the greater good.
One of my main roles was to design programs pulling from the military training and development as an instructor in the Army, pulling some of those courses that I felt were necessary to mold the cadets into what we want to become, in what we want the cadets to become in the future. And it's not just about being the training one, it's about your instructors also. Because it's every day, 24 hours, right? They became like our children, right? Because we love the cadets, we love the program. Besides all the challenges, we recognize that we have to go the extra mile to ensure the success of each and every single cadet.
Many a parent that brought their children to the MiLAT Academy came with doubts. Some came with hope, some came with faith. But in a short while, as much as in some instances 2 weeks to 3 weeks, parents will tell you that when they heard and saw their children that they left there after 2 or 3 weeks, they couldn't believe that their child made the type of transformation in their language, in their outlook. And in doing so, the parents will share with the children the way they felt.
So that parent grouping, they had real faith in our ability to help their children. And they were the advocates for us when we couldn't speak.
They will share with the staff the way they felt. They will ask to assist in areas of the program that were, of course, short of personnel, short of material, and so on.
So the parents were a great part of it. I remember the stories we got from the parents in the early days was that After their young people, their children had come home to them after the initial 6 weeks, they barely recognized them. They were saying, okay, my son is wearing his pants on his waist.
Parents will call you the very next Monday morning and say, that is not my son. What it is you all doing down there? He came home, he never left the house.
He's making up his room. You know, he's keeping his environment clean.
Some friends come to call him, he tell them, is that right? At home, alignment, but alignment home.
Those were a lot of the good things, I think, that were coming out of it.
It is evident that the pioneers who took a bold step into the unknown have over time assembled a network whose synergy holds sustainable, transformative power. A power that could have been diminished if not for the timely appointment of Major Cheryl Richardson as MiLAT's new program director in the wake of Major David Benjamin. With passion and uncompromising work ethic, Major Richardson sought to elevate the prestige of the model founded by the program's pioneers.
I have a strong interest in developing youth, especially those that can be considered underprivileged or challenged. One of the passions that I have is to see them achieve the full potential and getting satisfaction from seeing them grow, seeing them achieving, seeing them in military uniforms in all different types of careers in Trinidad and Tobago, and seeing the discipline, the level of discipline that they have attained and the respect that they garner from members of society because of what they have achieved and the way they carry about themselves keeps my passion going.
To have young men who came into such a program 10 years ago, now sitting as instructors, military instructors, that speaks volumes.
It must be stated that this sustainable, transformative power is imparted through wise counsel and direct mentorship of the instructors, teachers, and staff at the Academy, as seen in the lives of two former cadets who returned to the program as military instructors.
When I came in here, I wrote CXC 4 times. But the teachers on them was so, how much to put it? They were so entwined with us and they loved us in a certain way. Like if they were parents, they make me become a better person academically, and today I have 6 passes through the MiLAT program.
I want to say thanks for all the cheering. I only here to try a little thing. I would like these fellas to know it is not so hard to extempo. Listen carefully, I'll tell you this. All you need to do is practice. What I'm going to say might make you all fall. They're not doing it good because they practice at all.
The most significant milestone was, in fact, just getting the program running.
Like a family atmosphere, not really a school atmosphere as such.
Bringing our own principal on board, as well as our own teachers, to actually come and teach classes under the supervision of military people sitting in the room. Those things were in a sense revolutionary.
The leadership of the curriculum administrator, Mr. Noel McIntosh, and the leadership taken up by Major Cheryl Richardson, having to try to fill the shoes and the gap that would have been left by Major David Benjamin. And she did well, exceptionally well.
The Independence Day Parade and participation in the CIC parade.
To know that some of them probably wanted to quit and they didn't, and now they make it to the end. Yes, your eyes just well up in truth. And you just feel to cry, yeah. To know that, that they achieved something and you as an individual had a part to play in that achievement.
The greatest achievement is how we have grown and developed, and we have become a very attractive institution for young men. So what happens now is that in excess of 400 young people annually apply to compete for the 100 spaces in the program. And that, for my mind, is the significant milestone.